Chapter 2. Jean Valjean still wears his arm in a sling by Victor Hugo from the book Les Misérables. To realize one's dream. To whom is this accorded? There must be elections for this in heaven. We are all candidates, unknown to ourselves, the angels vote. Cosette and Marius had been elected. Cosette, both at the mayor's office and at church, was dazzling and touching. Toussaint, assisted by Nicolette, had dressed her. Cosette wore over a petticoat of white taffeta, her robe of binche guipure, a veil of English point, a necklace of fine pearls, a wreath of orange flowers. All this was white, and from the midst of that whiteness she beamed forth. It was an exquisite candor, expanding and becoming transfigured in the light. One would have pronounced her a virgin on the point of turning into a goddess. Marius' handsome hair was lustrous and perfumed. Here and there, beneath the thick curls, pale lines, the scars of the barricade were visible. The grandfather, haughty, with head held high, amalgamating more than ever in his toilet, and his manners all the elegances of the epoch of Barras, escorted Cosette. He took the place of Jean Valjean, who, on account of his arm being still in a sling, could not give his hand to the bride. Jean Valjean, dressed in black, followed them with a smile. "Monsieur Fauchelevent," said the grandfather to him, "this is a fine day. I vote for the end of afflictions and sorrows. Henceforth there must be no sadness anywhere. Pardieu, I decree joy. Evil has no right to exist. That there should be any unhappy men is, in sooth, a disgrace to the azure of the sky. Evil does not come from man, who is good at bottom. All human miseries have for their capital and central government hell, otherwise known as the devil's Tuileries. Good, here I am uttering demagogical words. As far as I am concerned, I have no longer any political opinions. Let all men be rich, that is to say, mirthful, and I confine myself to that." When, at the conclusion of all the ceremonies, after having pronounced before the mayor and before the priest all possible yeses, after having signed the registers at the municipality and at the sacristy, after having exchanged their rings, after having knelt side by side under the pall of white moire in the smoke of the censer, they arrived, hand in hand, admired and envied by all, Marius in black, she in white, preceded by the Suisse with the epaulets of a colonel, tapping the pavement with his halberd between two rows of astonished spectators, at the portals of the church, both leaves of which were thrown wide open, ready to enter their carriage again, and all being finished, Cosette still could not believe that it was real. She looked at Marius, she looked at the crowd, she looked at the sky. It seemed as though she feared that she should wake up from her dream. Her amazed and uneasy air added something indescribably enchanting to her beauty. They entered the same carriage to return home, Marius beside Cosette. M. Gillenormand and Jean Valjean sat opposite them. Aunt Gillenormand had withdrawn 1 degree and was in the second vehicle. "My children," said the grandfather, "here you are, Monsieur le Baron and Madame la Baronne, with an income of 30,000 livres." And Cosette, nestling close to Marius, caressed his ear with an angelic whisper. "So it is true. My name is Marius. I am Madame Thou." These two creatures were resplendent. They had reached that irrevocable and irrecoverable moment at the dazzling intersection of all youth and all joy. They realized the verses of Jean Prouvaire. They were 40 years old taken together. It was marriage sublimated. These two children were two lilies. They did not see each other. They did not contemplate each other. Cosette perceived Marius in the midst of a glory. Marius perceived Cosette on an altar. And on that altar, and in that glory, the two apotheoses mingling in the background, one knows not how. Behind a cloud for Cosette, in a flash for Marius, there was the ideal thing, the real thing, the meeting of the kiss and the dream, the nuptial pillow. All the torments through which they had passed came back to them in intoxication. It seemed to them that their sorrows, their sleepless nights, their tears, their anguish, their terrors, their despair, converted into caresses and rays of light, rendered still more charming the charming hour which was approaching, and that their griefs were but so many handmaidens who were preparing the toilet of joy. How good it is to have suffered! Their unhappiness formed a halo round their happiness. The long agony of their love was terminating in an ascension. It was the same enchantment in two souls, tinged with voluptuousness in Marius and with modesty in Cosette. They said to each other in low tones, "We will go back to take a look at our little garden in the Rue Plumet." The folds of Cosette's gown lay across Marius. Such a day is an ineffable mixture of dream and of reality. One possesses and one supposes. One still has time before one to divine. The emotion on that day, of being at midday and of dreaming of midnight, is indescribable. The delights of these two hearts overflowed upon the crowd and inspired the passers-by with cheerfulness. People halted in the Rue Saint-Anton, in front of St. Paul, to gaze through the windows of the carriage at the orange flowers quivering on Cosette's head. Then they returned home to the Rue des Filles du Calvaire. Marius, triumphant and radiant, mounted side by side with Cosette the staircase up which he had been borne in a dying condition. The poor, who had trooped to the door and who shared their purses, blessed them. There were flowers everywhere. The house was no less fragrant than the church. After the incense, roses. They thought they heard voices caroling in the infinite. They had God in their hearts. Destiny appeared to them like a ceiling of stars. Above their heads they beheld the light of a rising sun. All at once the clock struck. Marius glanced at Cosette's charming bare arm, and at the rosy things which were vaguely visible through the lace of her bodice, and Cosette, intercepting Marius' glance, blushed to her very hair. Quite a number of old family friends of the Gillenormand family had been invited. They pressed about Cosette. Each one vied with the rest in saluting her as Madame la Baronne. The officer, Théodule Gillenormand, now a captain, had come from Chartres, where he was stationed in garrison, to be present at the wedding of his cousin Pontmercy. Cosette did not recognize him. He, on his side, habituated as he was to have women consider him handsome, retained no more recollection of Cosette than of any other woman. "How right I was not to believe in that story about the lancer," said Father Gillenormand to himself. Cosette had never been more tender with Jean Valjean. She was in unison with Father Gillenormand. While he erected joy into aphorisms and maxims, she exhaled goodness like a perfume. Happiness desires that all the world should be happy. She regained, for the purpose of addressing Jean Valjean, inflections of voice belonging to the time when she was a little girl. She caressed him with her smile. A banquet had been spread in the dining room. Illumination as brilliant as the daylight is the necessary seasoning of a great joy. Mist and obscurity are not accepted by the happy. They do not consent to be black. The night, yes. The shadows, no. If there is no sun, one must be made. The dining room was full of gay things. In the center, above the white and glittering table, was a Venetian lustre with flat plates, with all sorts of colored birds, blue, violet, red, and green, perched amid the candles. Around the chandelier, girandoles on the walls, sconces with triple and quintuple branches. Mirrors, silverware, glassware, plate, porcelain, faience, pottery, gold, and silversmith's work, all was sparkling and gay. The empty spaces between the candelabra were filled in with bouquets, so that, where there was not a light, there was a flower. In the antechamber, 3 violins and a flute softly played quartets by Haydn. Jean Valjean had seated himself on a chair in the drawing-room, behind the door, the leaf of which folded back upon him in such a manner as to nearly conceal him. A few moments before they sat down to table, Cosette came, as though inspired by a sudden whim, and made him a deep courtesy, spreading out her bridal toilet with both hands, and with a tenderly roguish glance she asked him, "Father, are you satisfied?" "Yes," said Jean Valjean, "I am content." "Well then, laugh." Jean Valjean began to laugh. A few moments later, Basque announced that dinner was served. The guests, preceded by M. Gillenormand with Cosette on his arm, entered the dining room, and arranged themselves in the proper order around the table. 2 large armchairs figured on the right and left of the bride, the first for M. Gillenormand, the other for Jean Valjean. M. Gillenormand took his seat. The other armchair remained empty. They looked about for M. Fauchelevent. He was no longer there. M. Gillenormand questioned Basque. "Do you know where M. Fauchelevent is?" "Sir," replied Basque, "I do precisely. M. Fauchelevent told me to say to you, sir, that he was suffering, his injured hand was paining him somewhat, and that he could not dine with Monsieur le Baron and Madame la Baronne, that he begged to be excused, that he would come tomorrow. He has just taken his departure." That empty armchair chilled the effusion of the wedding feast for a moment. But if M. Fauchelevent was absent, M. Gillenormand was present, and the grandfather beamed for 2. He affirmed that M. Fauchelevent had done well to retire early, if he were suffering, but that it was only a slight ailment. This declaration sufficed. Moreover, what is an obscure corner in such a submersion of joy? Cosette and Marius were passing through one of those egotistical and blessed moments when no other faculty is left to a person than that of receiving happiness. And then, an idea occurred to M. Gillenormand. "Pardieu, this armchair is empty. Come hither, Marius. Your aunt will permit it, although she has a right to you." "This armchair is for you," That is legal and delightful. Fortunatus beside Fortunata. Applause from the whole table. Marius took Jean Valjean's place beside Cosette, and things fell out so that Cosette, who had at first been saddened by Jean Valjean's absence, ended by being satisfied with it. From the moment when Marius took his place and was the substitute, Cosette would not have regretted God himself. She set her sweet little foot, shod in white satin, on Marius' foot. The armchair being occupied, M. Fauchelevent was obliterated, and nothing was lacking. And, 5 minutes afterward, the whole table from one end to the other was laughing with all the animation of forgetfulness. At dessert, M. Gillenormand, rising to his feet, with a glass of champagne in his hand, only half full so that the palsy of his 80 years might not cause an overflow, proposed the health of the married pair. "You shall not escape 2 sermons," he exclaimed. "This morning you had one from the curé, this evening you shall have one from your grandfather. Listen to me, I will give you a bit of advice, adore each other. I do not make a pack of gyrations, I go straight to the mark, be happy. In all creation only the turtle doves are wise. Philosophers say, moderate your joys. I say, give rein to your joys. Be as much smitten with each other as fiends. Be in a rage about it. The philosophers talk stuff and nonsense. I should like to stuff their philosophy down their gullets again. Can there be too many perfumes, too many open rosebuds, too many nightingales singing, too many green leaves, too much aurora in life? Can people love each other too much? Can people please each other too much? Take care, Estelle, thou art too pretty. Have a care, Nemorin, thou art too handsome. Find stupidity, in sooth. Can people enchant each other too much, cajole each other too much, charm each other too much? Can one be too much alive, too happy? Moderate your joys. Ah, indeed, down with the philosophers. Wisdom consists in jubilation. Make merry, let us make merry. Are we happy because we are good, or are we good because we are happy? Is the Sancy diamond called the Sancy because it belonged to Harley de Sancy, or because it weighs 600 carats? I know nothing about it, life is full of such problems. The important point is to possess the Sancy and happiness. Let us be happy without quibbling and quirking. Let us obey the sun blindly. What is the sun? It is love. He who says love says woman. Ah, ah, behold omnipotence, women. Ask that demagogue of a Marius if he is not the slave of that little tyrant of a Cosette. And of his own free will, too, the coward. Woman, there is no Robespierre who keeps his place, but woman reigns. I am no longer royalist except towards that royalty. What is Adam? The kingdom of Eve, no 89 for Eve. There has been the royal scepter surmounted by a fleur-de-lis. There has been the imperial scepter surmounted by a globe. There has been the scepter of Charlemagne, which was of iron. There has been the scepter of Louis the Great, which was of gold. The revolution twisted them. Between its thumb and forefinger, halfpenny straws. It is done with, it is broken, it lies on the earth. There is no longer any scepter, but make me a revolution against that little embroidered handkerchief which smells of patchouli. I should like to see you do it. Try. Why is it so solid? Because it is a gewgaw. Ah, you are the 19th century? Well, what then? And we have been as foolish as you. Do not imagine that you have effected much change in the universe because your trip gallant is called the cholera morbus and because your porée is called the cachuca. In fact, the women must always be loved. I defy you to escape from that. These friends are our angels. Yes, love, woman, the kiss forms a circle from which I defy you to escape, and for my own part I should be only too happy to re-enter it. Which of you has seen the planet Venus, the coquette of the abyss, the salamine of the ocean, rise in the infinite, calming all here below? The ocean is a rough Alcestis. Well, grumble as he will, when Venus appears he is forced to smile. That brute beast submits. We are all made so. Wrath, tempest, claps of thunder foam to the very ceiling. A woman enters on the scene, a planet rises, flat on your face. Marius was fighting 6 months ago, today he is married, that is well. Yes, Marius, yes, Cosette, you are in the right. Exist boldly for each other, make us burst with rage that we cannot do the same, idealize each other, catch in your beaks all the tiny blades of felicity that exist on earth, and arrange yourselves a nest for life. Party, to love, to be loved, what a fine miracle when one is young. Don't imagine that you have invented that. I too have had my dream, I too have meditated, I too have sighed, I too have had a moonlight soul. Love is a child 6,000 years old. Love has the right to a long white beard. Methusalem is a street Arab beside Cupid. For 60 centuries men and women have got out of their scrape by loving. The devil, who is cunning, took to hating man. Man, who is still more cunning, took to loving woman. In this way he does more good than the devil does him harm. This craft was discovered in the days of the terrestrial paradise. The invention is old, my friends, but it is perfectly new. Profit by it. Be Daphnis and Chloe while waiting to become Philemon and Baucis. Manage so that, when you are with each other, nothing shall be lacking to you, and that Cosette may be the sun for Marius, and that Marius may be the universe to Cosette. Cosette, let your fine weather be the smile of your husband. Marius, let your rain be your wife's tears, and let it never rain in your household. You have filched the winning number in the lottery. You have gained the great prize. Guard it well, keep it under lock and key, do not squander it, adore each other, and snap your fingers at all the rest. Believe what I say to you, it is good sense. And good sense cannot lie, be a religion to each other. Each man has his own fashion of adoring God. Saperlot, the best way to adore God is to love one's wife. I love thee, that's my catechism. He who loves is orthodox. The oath of Henry IV places sanctity somewhere between feasting and drunkenness. Venter Saint Gris, I don't belong to the religion of that oath. Woman is forgotten in it. This astonishes me on the part of Henry IV. My friends, long live women? I am old, they say. It's astonishing how much I feel in the mood to be young. I should like to go and listen to the bagpipes in the woods. Children who contrive to be beautiful and contented, that intoxicates me. I would like greatly to get married if anyone would have me. It is impossible to imagine that God could have made us for anything but this. To idolize, to coo, to preen ourselves, to be dove-like, to be dainty, to bill and coo our loves from morn to night, to gaze at one's image in one's little wife, to be proud, to be triumphant, to plume oneself. That is the aim of life. There, let not that displease you which we used to think in our day, when we were young folks. Ah, virtu bambach, what charming women there were in those days, and what pretty little faces and what lovely lasses. I committed my ravages among them. Then love each other. If people did not love each other, I really do not see what use there would be in having any springtime. And for my own part, I should pray the good God to shut up all the beautiful things that he shows us, and to take away from us and put back in his box the flowers, the birds, and the pretty maidens. My children, receive an old man's blessing. The evening was gay, lively, and agreeable. The grandfather's sovereign good humor gave the keynote to the whole feast, and each person regulated his conduct on that almost centenarian cordiality. They danced a little, they laughed a great deal. It was an amiable wedding. Goodman days of yore might have been invited to it. However, he was present in the person of Father Gillenormand. There was a tumult, then silence. The married pair disappeared. A little after midnight, the Gillenormand house became a temple. Here we pause. On the threshold of wedding nights stands a smiling angel with his finger on his lips. The soul enters into contemplation before that sanctuary, where the celebration of love takes place. There should be flashes of light athwart such houses. The joy which they contain ought to make its escape through the stones of the walls in brilliancy, and vaguely illuminate the gloom. It is impossible that this sacred and fatal festival should not give off a celestial radiance to the infinite. Love is the sublime crucible wherein the fusion of the man and the woman takes place. The being one, the being triple, the being final, the human trinity proceeds from it. This birth of two souls into one ought to be an emotion for the gloom. The lover is the priest, the ravished virgin is terrified. Something of that joy ascends to God. Where true marriage is, that is to say, where there is love, the ideal enters in. A nuptial bed makes a nook of dawn amid the shadows. If it were given to the eye of the flesh to scan the formidable and charming visions of the upper life, it is probable that we should behold the forms of night, the winged unknowns, the blue passers of the invisible, bend down, a throng of somber heads, around the luminous house, satisfied, showering benedictions, pointing out to each other the virgin wife gently alarmed, sweetly terrified, and bearing the reflection of human bliss upon their divine countenances. If at that supreme hour, the wedded pair, dazzled with voluptuousness and believing themselves alone, were to listen, they would hear in their chamber a confused rustling of wings. Perfect happiness implies a mutual understanding with the angels. That dark little chamber has all heaven for its ceiling. When two mouths, rendered sacred by love, approach to create, it is impossible that there should not be, above that ineffable kiss, a quivering throughout the immense mystery of stars. These felicities are the true ones. There is no joy outside of these joys. Love is the only ecstasy, all the rest weeps. To love or to have loved, this suffices, demand nothing more. There is no other pearl to be found in the shadowy folds of life. To love is a fulfillment.